Welcome to the Spectators Podcast. Here are your hosts, Corey and Jeff.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 6, season 2 of the Spectators Podcast. My name is Jeff, and to my mic adjacent, wearing a fantastic hat this week, one of many. The Nashville one was very cheeky, but this week, not so cheeky and more amazing is Corey. How are you today, my friend?
I'm good. We are gearing up for Christmas in a matter of like 5 or 6, 7 weeks. It's coming around, and speaking of that, we're getting closer and closer to that break time in hockey, and where the standings are is a very interesting point we're at. But how are you? How are things?
I am angry.
Why are you angry this time? Can I guess?
You probably could.
Go ahead.
It is right around the Canucks, of course. And again, not trying to make this a Vancouver-centric podcast, but it is the talk of the league, unfortunately. However, I do want to pivot quickly from the Canucks and talk about something else that has really upset me this week. Was the announcement by the NHL and NHLPA that they're going to delay the World Cup to at least February 2025. That's annoying because we haven't had true best on best since Sochi in 2014. Well, sorry, we had the World Cup in 2016, but you had those gimmick teams of Team Europe and Team North America. Now, Team North America, you look at that roster, pretty damn good roster, actually. You had Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid on the same team, but very strange in the sense that you had, Connor McDavid versus Canada and Austin Matthews versus America, right? And you had these guys who, it's a World Cup, and they were playing against their own nation. Very odd. You wouldn't see that in the Soccer World Cup, for example, right? Which is right around the corner, which is very exciting. Sure. So I'm annoyed. I'm really annoyed that they just it continues this theme. I think of the NHL just not seeing benefit in or just in international hockey in general, best on best hockey. They don't really care. Because even though it is an NHL-based tournament, this World Cup, they have this stance of what's in it for us, and does it really benefit us? We have to disrupt the season, yada yada yada. Right? They've always had that mentality around the World best on best hockey, right? And the only reason they went to Sochi really was because it was in Russia. And obviously they have a very problematic relationship with Russia. Yes, they condemned what's happening still in Ukraine. And actually one of the reasons they delayed this World Cup was they're hoping that by 2025, everything will in Ukraine and people won't be angry at Russia anymore. So Russia can be in the tournament. Which upsets me because, last episode we talked about Mitchell Miller and the problem with hockey culture. And yet we have another example here of hockey culture hoping something will blow over so that, this can happen, right?
Disregard and move on situation again, right?
Yes, and so it's frustrating to me because, for me personally, I'm just dying to see McDavid and Crosby play together, right? You have the two generational talents on one team, right? And there was talks about, even though COVID did get in the way, right, of the last time for the Olympics, right? And some argued it was a convenient case for the NHL. There were some significant risks, but it did sound like a lot of players were willing to sit almost 5 weeks in China if they had to. But the NHL called it off, right? And there was I can't remember who, a reporter was talking about the fact that Crosby was so looking forward to being that next mentor for the McKinnons, the McDavids, the Huberdeau. Well, Huberdeau's pretty old, but McCarrs, right? All those really young superstars. So it is really annoying to me and just frustrating because it's Like they talk all the they talk about diversity in hockey and things like that, and we're still not seeing it, right? Like even with the Mitchell Miller thing, right? Like Boston signed the contract. They still got to pay this guy, right? Even though they've quote unquote parted ways with him, right? And like anyways, so it's frustrating. It's really frustrating to me. And then, like again, it's not about the fans. It's about the owners. It's about filling their pockets, right? And like no one's. I don't think any fans really happy with this decision. I think everyone was, as much as it's not the Olympics, fine. It's still best on best hockey. It's still Connor McDavid playing with Sidney Crosby. It's still Austin Matthews playing with Jack Eichel. So it's today's this episode's a really angering day for me when it comes to hockey from on the international stage and of course on the NHL front.
I was listening to the analysts talk about it during the Vegas game yesterday, and a really interesting perspective was brought up about this, actually, about how the young guys, the young talents in the NHL, is not getting an opportunity to play in this World Cup because it's being pushed till 2025. And on the contrary, the older talent is losing the opportunity whatsoever to play. The talent that may have been late bloomers or may have never played in a World Cup before, especially with COVID and things like that have happened over the last few years. So you're having two spectrums of the NHL right now that are losing opportunities to play in a World Cup, and that is the worst thing you can do for hockey right now, because like you said, to the point of, okay, Connor McDavid and Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon, they're not spring chickens anymore either. And you got Crosby and Ovechkin and these guys who are on the end spectrum of their career. You want to say, like, they another 3 years from now, that's pushing it for them to be able to mentor these guys.
Two wouldn't have played anyways, right? Because he's Russian, but
yeah.
But it's very true. Like you think about guys like Crosby, even a guy like Drew Doughty, right? I think he would have been a bubble guy to make the team in China in last year. I think he still would have made it. I think you do need guys who've been through it. I mean, he's been on the team since he was 20, right?
You've got a few guys in the NHL right now that I think of that fit that Drew Doughty kind of perspective, right? That Drew Doughty, Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, a couple of guys who've been through it, right? They know, and they're I'm sure more than happy to mentor younger players, right?
Karlsson's a good point too,
and Crosby too. Like Karlsson. I mean, yeah, I think they're all just like certain situation where there's quite a few players you can think of that, if they lose out on an opportunity, kind of sucks for them and the people that they could have played with, right?
And guys like Roman Josi too. He's not getting any younger, and really, like, other than really screwed, like, not getting the Norris last year, now he's not going to get to really play in the World Cup either. He might, right, but he won't be the same, right? So like I didn't even think about the fact of, like, that's the thing too, is like Crosby is amazing right now, and now you're pushing it another year where he's like I think he was definitely in question to make the 2026 team, which I can't remember where it is in 2026 in the Olympics. Yeah, no, it's just like we get the pleasure of seeing the World Juniors every year, right? The best junior hockey players against each other, and it's such good hockey, right? Like, this year we're going to get Connor Bedard, right? At his 17 year, he's going to dominate that tournament, right? And like you see McDavid, like the guy's a video game in the NHL, right? You want to see him take that next step and see what he's going to do in the international stage, right? Because I think he's played on a few World Cup like a hockey Canada teams, the tournament in May, World Championships. I think he's played on a few of them, but like you want it, like, and I think for him, I think that's something on his list of, like, okay, I've dominated the NHL, right? Haven't won a cup yet, but that's not all him. Like he's dragged his team to the conference finals last year, him and Draisaitl. But like I think he really wants to see what he can do on a Team Canada. I think we all do, right? Like him and McKinnon and Barzell on the same line. I don't think anyone can catch that line. I think they would just get on the ice and be like, okay, the puck's in the net. How'd that happen? So it's really disappointing, and it's just unfortunate that once again, hockey fans suffer for business decisions, and it does bother me that they're hoping this whole Russia thing will blow over. I think you can certainly debate too. Is it fair to Russian players that they get for this? I think that's a gray area. I think you can debate it either way. I'm not going to dive into politics here, because it will be here all night. But it's a sticky situation for sure, and like I just kind of wish, like, they said this year they were very excited. They were like, "Yep, 2024 February," which would have been basically where you would have had an Olympics, right? The guys are in mid-season form. They're going to go in. They're going to have a good turn. It's going to be a traditional tournament. No gimmick teams. Like, it's what you want, right? And it's just unfortunate that we're not going to get it for another year. And then it goes 2025, and then it goes to 2026. You're going to have back-to-back years of international hockey, which I can't see the NHL being too happy about either. So it's a really interesting decision.
We're gonna have a league of bunch of old fogies and not a lot of young talent getting opportunities to do these events, and it's gonna be an interesting one. Like I just think back, like, oh, I mean, we're going back a little bit, but you think of like how like Gretzky and Messier and stuff got to play in tournaments like this, and they were able to
things like that, yeah.
and they were able to influence the younger generations. Like even when Joe Sakic got to play and Steve Eiserman and things like that, they were influenced once, then they got to influence the next generation, and I feel like there's just been a little bit of a lack of that lately. It seems like it's going to continue down that role if they're going to make decisions like this. If they're going to make decisions where, they're going to push things out so far forward just for, political reasons, really. Yeah,
The players want it too, so it's annoying that the PA is on
it's
board with
hard.
that. And I know it's politics, but like,
Well, I think the hardest thing you said, it's like you said in the beginning. It's not from our fans' perspective. Like, let's put ourselves aside for a second. These are professionals who want to be and deserve to be in these positions to play in games like this, and they're not even being afforded the opportunity or rewarded to do that. That's the worst part.
it is, and I also think Canada wanted to delay it because they don't have a goaltender. So, although Carter Hart's having a good season, so hopefully that'll continue because
Got a hot.
we're in trouble in net when it comes to Canada. So we'll shift off the World Cup conversation, and we'll go to the other reason why I'm angry. I don't know, despondent. There's many sub. What's the word? Anyways, my English is failing right now. Many words I can say about this Vancouver Canucks team, and lots of Canucks fans. We ran a poll on a Canucks tweet for their game against Boston, which means Canucks fans are going onto the Canucks Twitter and responding. And it was, who's going to win, Bruins, Canucks, or don't care anymore. 60% said don't care anymore. 33% said Bruins, and 8% said Canucks. So that should probably tell you where the fan base is right now.
I find it interesting that as bad as they've been playing, that they've even won 4 games. Like, I don't know. Every time I feel like every single time I turn on a Canucks game and I get into it, you see them play well for such a short period of time, and they just, like, they gas out like they're an amateur team playing against an NHL team, and then they run out of fuel, and then they just get dominated. They either get, just keep getting scored on, or they give up a pretty decent lead, like a 2 or 3 nothing lead, or 3-1 lead or something like that, and they just keep kind of running into the same troubles, and they keep doing the same thing. So it's weird because you're watching a team that, I mean, I want to say they're not learning from their mistakes, but at the same time, there's issues from, I mean, from what I can see, there's issues from, the player personnel, the bench, the coaching, the defense, the forwards, like every aspect of their game is off in one way or another. And if it's not one thing, it's the other. And I'm starting to see a lot of tension in that room. Like, there's a lot of tension between the players. Like, you see players that are just on the ice that just are genuinely upset. They're not happy with with the way things are going. You got Thatcher Demko, who is not playing at his full potential, and I almost feel like he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to play well for this team because they're not playing well in front of him. And I don't
Well,
blame
they
the
are
guy.
not.
They're
The tire
not.
fire in front of them.
And then you look at another perspective. Like, you got the leader on the team who, bleeds blue and green for this team. And the ownership and the management could care less if he comes back. I read a quote from Jim Rutherford the other day saying that, more or less, the gist of it is that, they haven't had any negotiations. And if he signs with us, great. And if he doesn't, we wish him the best. And that's who wants to come and play on a team who you're a captain is getting treated like that. No player is going to want to come in and play for you. This team is in a dire need of a rebuild. Now, not tomorrow, not in a year, right now. Like, and the problem is, I'll let you get in a second. I want to get my rant out. The problem is, like, if you mentioned it best in that point where the general consensus on Twitter, on social media, everywhere, even when I talk to people face to face, they just don't care anymore. Right? There's the lack of care. The ownership is worried that, if we rebuild, we're gonna lose fans. Well, you're gonna lose fans if you keep playing like this. You're gonna lose fans if you continue to. If you go and you come out to a press conference and you're honest with your damn fans and say, we suck, we do, and you know what, we need to rebuild, and we're going to rebuild, and we're going to suck for a few years. Bear with us while we go through this rebuild. We'll get through the rebuild, and when we do get through that rebuild, we'll be better than we ever have been. If you go and you tell your fans you're honestly going through a rebuild and just be honest about the rebuild, I think you're going to retain true fans, better fans, and you're going to come out of it a hell of a lot better. Because what's the point of coasting, and what results are you getting? Being lower in the standings than the Arizona Coyotes, who are playing in a college arena. The Chicago Blackhawks are actually not playing that bad this season.
I'm pretty good, actually.
And then you look at the Canucks, like I said, who I honestly wonder how they even got 4 wins on the season. But
it's true.
I don't know. I'm at a. You know how I feel. I mean, my team's on top right now, so I don't have any complaints.
It's true. Vegas is playing very well.
But at the end of the day, I feel for this team. I do still have that sense of passion. This is my team where I grew up, and seeing them the way they are, this is the worst Canucks team I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, and if you listen to the fans too, this is the worst. Like, and you're talking fans who started since the 70s. They're like, this is the worst I felt. That's telling. Like, they've been through a lot, right? But it's almost as if, like, this is what happens when you don't rebuild. You get mediocrity. And from when Jim Benning was hired, that was the standard. It was playoff revenue is the priority, right? You didn't trade players at their highest, right? In fact, you just let them go for nothing, i.e. Markstrom and Tanev, right? This is what you get. You get a team that is strapped by contracts. They can't move anything. And Jim Rutherford has said it. He's like, yeah, we tried, and no one wants our players, right? Obviously, outside of like Hughes and Pettersson, right? So this is why you get the president of hockey operations in 3 separate occasions in 1 week lambasting this team, which is so telling, right? He feels so out of control of what's happening right now that all he can do that's within his control is basically lambaste the coach, and say, like, this is not good enough. You basically all suck. You have no structure. You're not playing for each other. And what's most concerning is there's been absolutely no response. There's clearly no, outside of a few players, I would say Pedersen and Hughes and Demko, he's not playing well, and Spencer Martin. Like, those guys are showing pride. The rest of the team, not, right? They are not responding to, like, you got to the NHL because you were competitive, right? That's the reason you're there, because you were like, I'm the best. I'm going to push myself. I make it, right? So like now that they're on this team, like there's just you watch these games and like you said, they just give up. They just stop. They stop trying, or they're just like against Boston. It was like, okay, I guess we'll try in the third period, but guess what? You're facing one of the best teams in NHL. Nice try, right? Boston was coasting in that third period, and they still outplayed the Canucks, right? And guess what? Boston and Vancouver were in the 2011 final together, right? And look at the trajectories of each team. Yes, Vancouver was an older team at that time, absolutely. Like, like they made the Cup final again. They've been perennial playoff teams, right? Because I mean, they screwed up a draft. Like, that's fine, but like they accepted where they were. Like they moved Milan Lucic, right? That you get assets for these guys, right? Someone made a really good point. Actually, a Canucks fan made a really good point in that if you look at Jersey and Vancouver, 17 draft, right? They get Nico Hischier first overall. We get Elias Pettersson overall, and they're both going in the same direction. Look where Jersey is now versus us, right? Actually, Jersey's a hilarious story because in the beginning of the season, they were obviously upset with how the team was going over these past few years, right? So they were chanting "Fire Lindy," which is Lindy Ruff, the head coach. Just their last home game, the crowd said "Sorry, Lindy," because the team is actually playing super well. So I thought that was quite hilarious. So like, it's just such a perplexing. Again, there's like it's hard. Like this is the third week in a row you and I are. It's like the definition of insanity, is it not? We're coming to this platform to talk about the same things over and over again. Team's not playing hard. It's dysfunctional. It needs a rebuild, right? Like we're saying the same things. Fans are seeing the same things. The analysts are saying the same things, right? If you see it enough, like you got to lean into it, right? So I agree with the fans. Like this team is not good enough, right? And need to be smart about this, right? Like, are Pedersen and Hughes, do you want to keep them? Like if you're going to rebuild, think about it smartly, right? You should probably trade Demko. He's on a really good contract. By the time you're good again, he's not going to be in his prime, right? Maybe he will. Goalies tend to be good later in their life, but not at what Demko will come
more
in,
risk, more risk there, and I think I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but we said it in the summertime, right? We talked about this in the summertime. We already had a little bit of feeling of we were a little antsy already, feeling going into the season from the summer, and we saw some things that showed us typical Canucks fashion. One of them being the fact that they signed Miller to a long-term contract.
They doubled down on players. Like they doubled down
And
on
now
Miller.
you look
They
at that,
signed
and don't you think, what what the heck did I do 3 months ago? And now you look at the team and what they're doing.
and the Mikhaev signing too, right? Like why? Like if a team's this and they said they weren't sold on this team yet. They doubled down by signing Miller and signing Mikhaev. Right now, you're anchored by Miller and you're pretty much anchored by Mikhaev. He's a good player, but he's not worth 4.5 million.
Not worth
Right?
4.5 million.
Like so if you want to prove the owner is not meddling in this team, you rebuild because you've got a lot of smart people in that executive room with Vancouver. You have Jim Rutherford, who's won 2 cups with 2 different organizations. You've got Patrick Allvin, who's seen a championship team, right? You've got Emily Castonguay, you've got Cami Granado, you've got some I can't. Derek Clancy is the other AGM. You've got some really smart people there. Stan Smeal's also vice president of hockey operations, right? Show us how smart you are. Show us that the owner is no longer meddling because meddling, that's why we're here.
From
We
our
are here.
perspective, he still is.
So prove us wrong. Prove us that this isn't going to be the same because, like, like, that's the thing. We talked about how the short sightedness, right? You're gonna like you were. I think people like they don't realize they're gonna lose fans, right? Unless you come out and say it, you're gonna lose fans because they're like, you know what? I've been through this for 8 years. Like the playoffs again, right?
What's the point of making the playoffs at this stage? Let's say we make the playoffs in 2 years. What's the point? You think we're going to go anywhere with this team? No. If they keep the team the way it is, making the playoffs at this point, if we made it this year, next year, the year after, like, I just feel like there's so many holes, and those holes will continue unless they make a major change. They can't just patch
But
up.
it's the locker room. Like
Yeah.
they just don't care about each other, right? You just
No.
see it, right?
Yeah.
And they just don't care, right? You could put any coach, like you said, we said last episode, again, insanity. Put any coach behind that bench, going to play the same because they
gonna
don't
play the
care
same.
about each other, right? So we'll see. We got to move off it because it's just
We
it's
got to
the
move off
same.
it. But I've got a couple questions here to move on. Help us move and transition
Good,
off of here so we
'cause
don't roll in
I'm so
insanity.
I'm so done.
One question to finish off this topic is this. How long do you say Bruce Boudreau has left until he gets fired? We talked about this 3 weeks ago.
I
What
actually
do you
asked the
think
Canucks
now?
fans. I said, does he coach Friday, which is their next home game? I don't know.
I can't see this guy making it past December 1st. That's all I'm saying. Like, I mean, that's giving him a stretch, but, like, I like the guy. But, you know,
This team doesn't care about him.
the team doesn't care about him. And if you make a move as bold as firing the coach to make a message, and even maybe getting rid of somebody in that locker room somehow,
Oh,
you are
yeah.
going to make enough of a splash to say, hey, here's a fire under your rump, and if you're not playing up to standard, this is what's going to happen. If you're not coaching up to standard, this is what's going to happen. So we know what your coaching change is going to come anyways, whether it's now, whether it's halfway through the season, or whether it's at the end of the season. Bruce Boudreau is not staying here. We know that. We know that's the case. So, I mean, there's not the way that they're playing right now. They could fire him and have their assistant coach take over temporarily. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, so yeah, no, that was my first question. My second question is, let's talk about the rest of the NHL. Let's look at
hmm
the standings this year, because last
I was gonna say,
week,
I was just gonna say, like the top three right now in the league. I don't think you and I ever saw coming. It's Boston 1 at 14-2, Vegas second at 13-3, and the New Jersey Devils third at 12-3
what did I tell you? What did I tell you? Don't sleep on the Kings. They're fourth.
at 10-6. The Islanders,
So
which is good to see for the Islanders. They have a bit of a bounce back season so far. Like we're only 16
far,
games,
we're only
but when you get to that 20 game mark, you have a good idea of who you got, right?
we did say that. We said, when the standings hit and we hit that 20 game mark, we're coming close to it with most teams right now. We have a good idea of where the teams are going to go into the midseason. Breaking this down by conference and division, there's a lot of surprises here. I mean, you look at the Pacific Division right now, and it's VGK 1, LA Kings 2, Seattle Kraken 3. Where's Edmonton? Where's Calgary right now?
Well, Edmonton's imploding because they don't have a goalie, which
Edmonton
is
is
funny because they just
imploding.
spent 5 years on a goalie.
Calgary has a ton of inconsistencies right now, and this is why they can't seem
That
to.
is so surprising to me. Like I did not see that coming. Like
And I
you thought
wonder
with the
if the kids who left the block are making fun of them now. Like, I
it's a team
wonder
that
if
hasn't gelled yet. That's my biggest
yeah.
that's my biggest wonder. Like, will they figure it out? Right?
Well,
Like
they might.
because they're 6-6, so they're 500, which no one saw them being 500. But they've got that's one of those things. Like you look at someone like Vancouver versus Calgary, right? We had this discussion last time, but like that's a team I feel can figure it out. They've got Nazem Kadri, Jonathan Huberdeau, Elias Lindholm. Like they've got
Got Markstrom as goaltender. They got
Markstrom. Dan Vladar is a good backup, right? Like they have a team that I think is just going to take some time. Like they lost two of their best scorers. I heard Andrew Mangiapane's not having a good start to the season. He got 35 goals last season, right? So I think I'm I'm encouraged that Calgary can turn it around, and of course Arizona is not gonna, not going to be where they are, but they're actually playing better than I think everyone thought. And I think, that's just them saying, we have no stakes, so let's just go out and play,
Why not
right?
play? Why not
Yeah.
play? I mean, the more they do this and the more the more point of mediocrity they get, the less chance they have to win the NHL sweeps or the draft sweepstakes. Although it is Arizona, it is the NHL, and anything can happen. I doubt even if the Canucks were last, they'd still get the spot.
Probably not.
But
That's why the draft right is such a crapshoot, right? But however, the top three this year is really good.
yeah,
But again, you have that caveat of Mitchkov, right? But
yeah.
so and that's why I thought if the Canucks get the third pick, like, do you like and Mitchkov you could argue could be, almost equal to Bedard, like
Fair,
obviously not Bedard, right? But like you're
fair
close. Like
point.
it's like Eichel and McDavid's draft year, right? Eichel's not McDavid, but it's not
He's a
it's not a
good
bad
player.
not a bad consolation prize, right? So Mitchkov is that.
He just
However, you
he just stuck it to his old team and got a hat trick the other day. So
I got 4 points actually.
I know.
So
All in the
good for
third
us.
period to mention too.
Yeah, good for Jack. But that's the thing is like, if you're a team like the Canucks or anyone really, like if you're drafting third, you've obviously not had a good run, right? Can you wait those extra, was it 2020, extra 3 years for him, right? Which who knows, right? Anyways, yeah, like and it's been interesting. It'll be interesting. Like as we hit the 20 game mark, and you look at some of these teams, like someone like a St. Louis too. No one really saw St. Louis being this abysmal, right? I'm actually surprised too how bad Anaheim's doing. I thought they'd
Me
be
too.
doing better. Like I didn't see this coming. I thought they'd be a lot better
They're
team.
they're they're last in the division, and honestly, I thought they would be somewhere outside, maybe just outside of the wild card. Like not this bad, right?
Like, well, I mean, they lost Jamie Drysdale, which is one of their best defensemen. I don't know what's happened to John Gibson. That poor man is. I think he's a shell of himself.
Yeah.
But
Even the Central Division, to be honest, is a surprise to me. Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado. Um, I know Dallas is my partner's sleeper team. She doesn't want us to sleep on them.
Dallas can be like that.
They're
Like, they're just
interesting. They're very
they just
interesting.
again you're that lunch bucket team that just just
They're a
doesn't
little
fit, right?
refreshed too, because they have a new coach in place too, so they might have that new refreshment, right? Not a huge fan of DeBoer, but he does have some success with teams.
He gets
in the past.
results, right?
He gets results. And Colorado sitting in third surprises me a little bit, but it is early and
That doesn't
still
surprise me that much because they did lose, like they lost Kadri, right? They lost Burakovsky, right? So they did lose some pieces and they didn't really have much to replace, right?
right.
Funny enough, I wonder if that's a team that goes for Horvat. If the Canucks will retain the salary, that's like nothing on their cap, right? And I don't know what trade protection Horvat has, but I can't see him saying no to Colorado.
No, absolutely not.
Oh, and I think they still have their first round pick this year.
I heard there might be some interest from the Leafs in Horvat too, is what I heard. I don't know if that's
I don't know
possible.
if the Leaf would have the pieces because
That'll-
obviously
yeah.
if you're trading Horvat, you're looking for futures, right?
Yeah.
Which I hope. Well, mind you, they're saying they want good young players, and I swear every time I hear that, I have an aneurysm because of Benning. Anyways, we're trying to not talk about the Canucks right now. So yeah, again, some early surprises. I'll be kind of curious when we hit like the 30 to 40 game mark, like where that's going to unfold because I feel like Calgary,
that'd be like right after
Like
let's
close
say
to
mid January, end of January kind of thing.
that, right? Like just after Christmas, right? We would kind of see because I wonder how like a Nashville's are they gonna recover, right? Edmonton actually figure it out, or will this goaltending issue really actually affect them,
I don't
right?
think they're gonna figure it out. I think that we're seeing early signs of they put all their chips in a goalie they thought was gonna work for them, and it's not. I don't know, and it sucks to be them, and it sucks to be Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid because you're looking at where you were last year. You thought you'd improved from better goaltending, and you're sitting where you are right now. I think they still have the chance to turn it around, just like Calgary. But I mean, if you look at the fact that they now have to try to turn it around, and they have teams who are ahead of them, like LA's getting into a big role, right? And I knew they would do better this season. Seattle's in a pretty good role too. I don't think anybody's catching up to Vegas at this point, But
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
I mean,
because
yeah,
like Thompson's doing well, but and it's early in the season. It's his first season as a starter, right? So we'll actually see how things unfold as it
the
moves forward,
the
right?
the biggest problem with that I can share is watching Thompson like and Hill, like it's a good back to back duo, and I think the nice thing is you have two good goaltenders. You don't have any great goaltenders, but you have two good goaltenders that can play back to back, and
So maybe just put the starts
there's
then later in the season.
consistency there. But what I'm seeing is that they're letting in too many goals. The problem
Mm.
is they're letting in too many goals, but Vegas is so strong with scoring that they're just outscoring the amount of bad goals they're letting in. So how long can they go on that stretch is the question. But I do see, they're going to tighten up as they play more and get more consistency because
Actually, then that's something I did want to bring up too, because it's really interesting to see that you see the coaching switch. Well, switch, but like so, Bruce Cassidy went to Vegas, right? And then you have Jim Montgomery. Yes, Jim Montgomery in Boston, and both those coaching changes have really seen to benefit both of those
both
teams, right?
teams.
And Montgomery's a really it's a cool story because I don't know if you know his background, but he was the coach of Dallas before Rick Bowness.
Oh, okay.
But he resigned. He was kind of a forced resign because he was reported to be suffering from having issues with alcohol. So he went into he went into rehab and things like that, and it was really cool to see because now he's back coaching. He's coaching Boston, and Boston is doing incredible. And I think they are really actually because you and I were really wondering why would you fire Bruce Cassidy? He's a really good coach, and was a very good team. But I guess they really thought the team needed a fresh voice, and then they were correct. They absolutely were correct because like they're playing very well this season, way better than I thought they
And
would.
it's very clear that Bruce Cassidy is still a good coach. It wasn't just Boston. It wasn't just what he was doing. He's
It's very
come
much
in.
rejuvenated that room, I
He's
think. And I think there was
rejuvenated that room.
a lot of toxicity in that locker room, as we discussed before, right? And I think it was nice to have like a coach with a ton of success, right? I think he went to the final with them. Like he's had Bruins. Also like Boston's all about culture, right? Minus the Mitchell Miller stuff, but that wasn't the players, it was the management. But like Cassidy was part of that strong Boston culture, and Boston is known to have a very strong culture, right? So I think he brings that mentality to Vegas, and it seems like it's really working, right? Because it looks like the team's having fun again. Like they looked so miserable last year, right?
Oh yeah.
Last year they did not look they were having a fun time, but like I've seen a couple of their games and they seem like they're having fun.
I think your key players are having fun, and that's really important. You got your Stones who's having fun, your
they're healthy,
Petrangelo's
too.
having fun, and you got your Jack Eichel who has a smile on his face for the first time in 4 years. So you know what I mean? Like he's having fun,
Yeah.
and that's a big difference. You got guys who can score from the front, who can score from the back, and you got a new refreshed coach who is successful. So
Just hope they can stay healthy because they
I
did
hope so,
really
too.
get smacked by injuries last year. So we'll definitely see how things go. But I think we'll wrap up the NHL side of our podcast. And so thanks everyone for listening. Please subscribe on YouTube. Have a listen on our audio side of Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'll jump over to the professional wrestling side.
All right, we'll catch you on that.